Today I'm joined by film historian, author and documentary director John Hamilton to discuss the incredible new House of Hammer Volume 1 box set, his feature documentary Masques, Monsters and Madmen Part One, and his latest book, Witches, Bitches and Banshees. We'll be talking Hammer films, American international pictures, Vincent Price, Roger Corman, classic British horror, and much more. Of course, much more. Let's get started.
Let's get started indeed. John, thank you so much for joining me. I really do appreciate it.
My pleasure. That intro looked very cool, by the way.
Oh, thank you. I try a little bit. I always try and try something a little bit different every time I do something. Get 1% better every time I make something.
No, look good. Look good.
Thank you. So congratulations on what seems to have been an incredibly busy few months. How does it feel, first of all, seeing House of Hammer Volume 1? Here it is in my sweaty hand. Out in the world after so much work.
You know what? It was because these things are all embargoed for ages. So I take the embargo really seriously. I told my wife, didn't tell anybody else what we were working on. So I'm having drinks with friends, and I'm part of the Gentleman Horror Club that we meet every now and again. So I'm meeting artists and publishers and script, and you can't say anything to anybody. Theoretically, I guess you could say, I did a bit for Hammer, no discussion, but I find it easier just to say nothing. Long answer, but you're to summarize my feelings, hugely relieved that I could then start saying to people, that's what I've been doing for the last 6 months.
It's out of the bag.
It's out of the bag, absolutely.
So for this project, I think quite a unique project. It almost reminds me of like when I used to collect like binders of information and or fanzines, but it's put together in such a great package. There's so much in there. What makes this different than, say, a traditional Blu-ray release or DVD release? Because it's hard. I've been trying to explain to people why I like it and what's in it, but it's actually quite a difficult thing to sum up, I think. Yeah,
it's probably a generational thing. You're probably just a little bit too young to remember the old House of Hammer magazine in the 1970s, which what had ostensibly was a Hammer themed publication, and every month they would pick a Hammer film, and they would do a graphic representation of it, and they'd have some behind the scenes stuff, and then all the other stuff in the magazine was what was happening in contemporary horror scene, but it was called House of Hammer. And essentially, I guess that's the thought behind this box set, is to replicate that. It's Hammer branded, it's made by Hammer, it has the values and the quality that you'd expect, and they're bringing to all their DVDs or Blu-rays. But you also have it's wide open. Anywhere in the world of British horror is fair target for them. So they can go backwards or forwards from the Hammer period. And they can pull all sorts of things in, and also they can give you, or give people like me, time to go deep into subjects that we wouldn't get a chance to go into. So I've got 2 documentaries on the first disc, neither of which are really covered anywhere else. And again, I'm giving you a long answer to a relatively short question.
No, please do. No.
But if you want to know the difference between a Blu-ray and this box set, is that my documentary for AIP is 4.5 hours long. There's not a Blu-ray out there that would allow me to put a 4.5 hour long documentary on it. If we released Masque of the Red Death or Pit in the Pendulum or something, I'm not going to have a 4.5 hour documentary to go with it as an extra. You'd be lucky if you got a 20-minute feature. So they're giving me the space to go really deep into subjects.
Yeah, that is deep is definitely the word, because it feels like, and I don't know if this was the case, is as I was flicking through the booklet, I had to keep going back to the booklet to remind myself which bit I wanted to watch next, the short films, the documentaries, the interviews, or just reading the book itself, because it's a book more than a booklet, really. Was there a moment, like during your part in this, where you realized it was did it become bigger than anticipated? Did it keep getting bigger, or was it always the intention to jam pack it full of a range of different horror related information?
So, well, you'd have to go back to when I get involved in it. So I didn't know what they were planning to do. I was approached. I'm a guy called Steve Rogers, works for Hammer. A very nice guy. And he said, we're thinking of doing something in AIP based on your book or following your book. Would you be able to do this in, say, an hour? And I said, no. I said, I could maybe do it in 3 hours. And he said, well, okay, you've got 3 hours. And to be perfectly honest, he called my bluff, because I would have done it in 20 minutes if he'd asked me to do it. I had no idea they were going to give me 3 hours. And then that 3 hours then became 4.5 hours, because he said, look, this is so good. Let's get more people in. Let's make it bigger and go deeper. And is there any way we could get some people in the States involved in this? So we just kept expanding it until it ended up with this 4.5 hours. But originally, the original pitch was, could you do the AIP story in an hour?
No.
Well, yeah, of course you could do. You could do it in a a 50-second
like
trailer,
a potted history. Yeah,
if you wanted to, but you're not going to have anything of any meaning in there. You're just going to have quick clips, and then an expert coming on and going. And then AIP did the drive-ins. It's. I wanted to do something far more in depth and wider than that.
Yeah, it's interesting. I sat there with my notepad, writing down any film titles that I hadn't, or I either had or hadn't got or forgotten about, and I was just like, oh, I need to go back and check that one out. And as the Mr. Dan in the chat is saying, Mr. Dan Horror Channel, he's saying, like, he's really into the deep dive side of horror. He's got it. Apparently this set is on his Christmas list right now. So
well, good for him.
Yeah,
but,
it's great.
But that's his Christmas written off. That's the point. It's yeah. I think the whole box set is 8.5 hours, and then you've got the booklet that goes with it, which is really a small book in itself. So I don't expect to spend any time with your family over Christmas if you get this.
Yeah, even the short film as well, which I thought was really entertaining. Don't
forget if you're shopping for Christmas, Volume 2 will be out by then, and I think Volume 3 will be just about out, maybe even soon afterwards. So that's not just Christmas; that's your year blocked out for you.
That's it, and goodbye family for a little while. So as we said, the documentary focuses on American international pictures. What I like about this, I think, is it feels like the right time to tell the story in that comprehensive detail, because I guess everybody is interested in that evolution of horror a bit more now, aren't they? There seems to be a real people want to know the granular detail. Did it feel like the right time to tell this story in that amount of detail?
For the documentary? Well, yeah, I mean, I guess I didn't initiate the project, so I can't claim credit for anyone by osmosis. I wasn't the one who said, oh my God, this is just the time to do this. It followed Hot and Heels in my book, which covers the same ground, more in depth, I guess, because I had more space in book. And I felt when I did the book and the documentary is the same, that whenever anyone talks about AIP, they kind of talk about a few flagship films in the UK, but for the most part, it's American stuff they talk about. And the UK stuff to me is just as interesting, if not more interesting, certainly in the 19. If you like British horror, you can't get away from AIP. It's all over the place. And they don't get enough attention.
Yeah, and this certainly was, like I said, I was sat there with my notebook, and a lot of the ones I was writing down were the British ones that I hadn't, clocked onto. A lot of the American ones were familiar, so I think that's a really good point. Was there something that people have either come back to you or that you found yourself that from the making of either the book or the documentary, that there was like a piece of research or something that, even as someone who has studied it for as long as you have and have this deep love of horror, where you were like, oh, I just, this little morsel of research, I just can't wait to share this with the public?
Well, there's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of stuff because the book was researched for 20 years. So I started doing the book in 2006, I think. So I'm just accumulating stuff as I was going along. I'm doing lots of other writing, but whenever I happened to be interviewing someone who was involved in one of those films, I would get them onto the subject of the film and then store it away. And there's stuff in the book, less so maybe the documentary, that doesn't appear anywhere else. I sat with Vernon Sewell. I don't know if you're familiar with Vernon Sewell's work. He's known as the guy who directed Curse of the Crimson Altar and Blood Beast Terror.
Oh yes,
but
yeah,
he's actually directed fascinating B movies prior to that. His B movie programmers, particularly from the early '60s, are superb. They're really, really good. He was 93 or 94 when I met him and interviewed him. And he told me at that point that he'd only ever been interviewed once before in his life. And that was in the 1970s.
Wow.
So yeah, that full interview is available on Little Shop of Horrors now. And it played into, obviously, he that was in 2001, I think, 1999, something like that. I interviewed him. He's dead now, sadly. In fact, a lot of the people I spoke to are dead now. It's taken me that long to write the book. But yeah, it's interviews with people that wouldn't normally speak about this stuff. Anna Calder Marshall is another one. A wonderful actress. She was in Wuthering Heights for AIP. It's not one of their horror films, obviously. A slice of gothic, but horror film. And she's had an amazing career, and she was a wonderful lady. AIP picked her up after she just won it's a Golden Globe or an Emmy, I can't remember which. She'd won one or the other for appearing in a television production opposite Sean Connery, Michael Caine, and Paul Scofield. That was in 1969. So she's not just a fascinating actress, but she's had an amazing career. And the likes of Sean Connery, in between Diamonds Are Forever and the one he made immediately prior to that was Thunderball, I was willing to appear in a television production with her at the very height of his fame. That's how famous she was at the time. I'm completely forgotten now. But she made this amazing film for AIP called Wuthering Heights.
It's amazing, really, isn't it? That, like you said, there's a lot of these people who are, have these incredible stories, incredible bodies of work, and to say, oh, I've never been interviewed or I've barely talked to anybody about this. It feels like such a service that you're doing by doing that, because people want to hear these stories, and also that they're so willing to share them, because it's like, it's not, I've told this story 40 times,
Well, there's film's very transient, even more so today, actually, much more so today. So the generation that go to the cinema is actually only from the age of 16 to the age of 23 or 24 or something. That's the average cinema goer. So it's only for that 6 year people are actively going to the cinema. If we project back to the 1970s. So once you grow out of that and you stop going to the cinema, you're moving on, because television is not showing those type of movies in the 1970s. Video hadn't quite arrived yet. Obviously, the streaming's a long way away. So once it's gone, it's gone. And today it's transient for a very different reason, because there's so much and it's so readily available.
Yeah.
You don't pick up on stuff. So people like Anna Calder Marshall and Vernon Sewell, they can fall down the cracks because in the 1970s, you just don't see their films anymore. And today, I'm sure you could go on Netflix or something and find a film by either of them. But actually, there's so much new stuff and so much choice that actually no one is digging into that stuff unless they're looking for it. You don't accidentally find Vernon Sewell while you're looking for streaming options.
Yeah, yeah, it's almost I find that there's so much now that I sometimes just switch off completely, or I'll find something nefariously put on YouTube and from the 20s or 30s or whatever, and I'm just like, oh, this is really, really good.
Yeah,
And it's literally posted with no background, no, no information about it. And you kind of, it's almost like you're desperate to find something for yourself rather than have 1,000 things thrust upon you.
yeah, it's a real shame, I think, and I'm very interested to see where cinema and people like us go in the future. I speak to my kids who are in their 20s now, and they are film lovers. They're all three of them absolutely love cinema, but there's no depth of knowledge or background knowledge about the people who make cinema. So they love films, but not cinema. Is probably the distinction. They could name three or four Martin Scorsese movies, but they can't tell you what he made in the 1970s. They can't tell you his breakthrough film. They can't tell you the main themes he does. They can't tell you much about him. And likewise, Tarantino. Whereas when I was growing up, I could tell you everything there was to know about Terence Fisher or Freddie Francis or Toby Hooper. Because I went out to find that information. It wasn't readily available, but you sought it out. And it's probably true. You're obviously younger than me, but you'd have grown up watching, I know, Clive Barker movies or these kind of things. And you then seek out the films he made before. You follow his career afterwards. You develop this depth of knowledge around people you're interested in. I don't really see that happening with kids these days. I think they're just jumping from film to film to film. They're not following anyone's career. They're not following genres. They're not getting into cinema the same way that previous generations got into cinema.
Yeah, I think that a lot of that is like, for example, I would get a film magazine, and then until the next month, I couldn't afford or find any others, or maybe get a booklet from the video shop or something, and I would pore over that and maybe read that 30, 40 times, and that information is then hardwired in your brain, so you'll, like you say, all those, who the cinematographer was and why they made it, or how it got funded, and all this that really is now you can quickly go on to social media or look at a clip, but then you're onto something else, onto something else, onto something else. But I think the fact not having a lot of things and just having something that you poured over, like you're saying, it might be the Hammer magazines, or in my case, it was maybe like back when Empire used to list every film that was out, and things like that. And these, or even like fans of comics now, if you think about, like, for me, it was really hard to get a comic in the UK, a Batman comic or whatever. It had to be shipped over, and then they put the sticker on and with the price in English, and it was, that was it. You could just get whatever they had. And I've still got my first one, and that's what got me into comics. And it's only, I probably read that same one 100 times. So that's not an exaggeration. So of course it's going in, whereas now you don't need to, because there's so many streams of entertainment coming at you. You don't need to really remember any of them, do you?
It's about developing your knowledge, it's about retaining information and then developing and building on your knowledge. This will sound bizarre, but I remember as a boy at the age of 12, going to the Odeon. We didn't have one in our village, so you had to go to the from the film posters, because that information wasn't available anywhere else. I'm writing down the production companies. I'm writing it all down from the film posters, and I've told that story to a few guys that I've met over the years, and they're like, "Oh my god, I did the exact same thing." These days, you don't need to do that because everything's available on the internet. But I can still remember the films that I wrote that down. I can still recall the details of who directed and the cast and whatever else. And now we're 40, 50 years later. Whereas my kids now, they can't remember the title of the film they watched last week because you know what? They can just look it up on their phone and give it back to you. So they're not developing this body of knowledge or understanding about cinema, which then makes me wonder what's going to happen in the next generation. What is there going to be proper cinema? Or are we all going to go into a Netflix style 47 series documentary?
Yeah, it will certainly be an interesting, see how that develops. I was listening to a psychologist without going down too much of a rabbit hole of this, but yesterday, in fact, and she was talking about AI and how it's cutting out the finding out parts of our brain, the boring things that you have to do, and it's giving you the thing very quickly. Therefore, like, that's a net positive because you're not having to do the sort of soldiering element of thinking, the kind of, sitting there and going through books or whatever it is. But I actually think that sort of sitting on the carpet and pouring through the book and finding that thing, and the sort of, it takes longer, but the feeling is greater when you latch onto something of interest. So I guess it's just two different ways of looking at it. And she was like, well, it's actually a net positive because of the amount of time that we're wasting doing the finding part of it. And I was thinking, I don't know, I quite like the finding.
But that's the important. That's the important fact. I mean, you're a teacher as important as the answer itself. And I can pretty much certainly guarantee you one thing: the stuff in the House of Hammer Volume 1, it all relates to films 50 or 60 years old. 50 or 60 years from now, people won't document 2026. They'll have gone. They'll have long gone. People are not retaining the love.
Oh, I'm sorry, I've just lost your sound there a bit. I don't know can you still hear me okay?
Oh,
I can hear you now.
I can hear you fine.
Sorry. Yeah, sorry, I lost you completely.
Oh, okay.
And I didn't want to interrupt. Right. So I guess this, we're talking about, remembering those films from decades gone by. What I quite like about this was, this is a Hammer product, but it's not like Hammer versus other studios. There's a timeline here. There's there's interlinking and there's inspiration. Was that the intention of your way of looking at, because you have such a breadth of knowledge, just to kind of show where AIP fit in the timeline, so that people maybe who are just aware of Hammer or Amicus or certain ones, they can understand the context a bit more with this. I feel like I understand the context of it a lot more after watching the documentary.
I think so. I mean, I don't want to get all highfalutin and claiming it's about educating people. It's not. It's about providing entertainment to people who like that era or those type of movies. But I think there's a group of films that were made from about 1959 to about 1975. And they were made by all kinds of different companies and different people. And to the uninitiated, they're all just branded Hammer. The Hammer horror has become a generic term that extends far beyond just Hammer films. It defines the era, if you like. House of Hammer is bringing everything from horror, British horror, under one umbrella and trying to give you a proper perspective. So obviously, Hammer are by far the most important film production company in the UK in this market by some distance. But they certainly weren't the only, and it's important to give the other people a voice too. There are plenty of films in there that some people think are Hammer, some people know are not Hammer, but lots of people are completely unfamiliar with. They've never heard of them. Because you're attracted by the Hammer.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, sorry.
If you know,
I think there's a bit of crossover.
oh, I was going to say, if you know, if you're drawn into this because of the Hammer brand, or Peter Cushing, or Christopher Lee, or Vincent, any of those four brand names.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think there's definitely a lot of people who just see a Peter Cushing film and would call it a Hammer film. You know, just automatically. It's that shorthand, really, isn't it? And it's nice to kind of know where other companies fit, and shared talent and shared approaches, or completely different approaches. You know, I think when I was younger and I realized that, you know, Amicus films, you know, I could see those wonderful anthologies, and I was like, oh, I like this style. I'll find more of them. And then I was like, oh, there are more of them. There's loads of them. So it's nice to kind of go down and find one thing that has like a domino effect. So if you like this film, then there's four. I mean, I guess we touch on in the documentary, you touch on Roger Corman, and I think the Poe cycle of films, it inspired me to go and find a good copy of Tower of London and the Poe site. You know, I love the Arrow set of the Poe films, but that really is as important a cycle of films as Dracula and Frankenstein. It's beautiful to look at, and something that in Britain I don't think we talk a massive amount about. It was lovely to hear you in the documentary discuss the impact of those Corman films.
Well, we're very UK centric in the UK. Sorry, that sounds like an obvious statement, but we tend to think that our films are bigger and more important than Hammer's Dracula cycle. The Roger Corman was far more prolific than Terence Fisher. In worldwide sales, they were huge. I'm not saying Hammer weren't huge, but the AIP Corman films were to America, which has got, I don't know, 300 million people. They will tell you that the Witchfinder General is called the Conqueror Worm. So that's 300 million people at least think it's the Conqueror Worm, compared with 56 million people in this country. And South America, Canada, as well as Japan and the Far East. So at least half the world saw as the Conqueror Worm. At least half the world saw that the Dracula as horror of Dracula. But we get very dismissive and say, well, it's not horror.
Yeah.
Dracula. We tend to ignore that actually there's a whole world out there as a slightly different perspective on our films than we have.
Yeah. The hearing that the different titles again, we are, like I say, I'm definitely guilty of that, of going no, like no, it's not called that. Witchfinder General, the part on the, I'm not going to give any spoiler because I want people to buy it, but I found the kind of inside the psyche of Vincent Price as it making the film and talking about his feelings about it. I thought it was explained the best I've heard that. I've heard similar discussions, but I thought that was explained with the most amount of clarity. And it's fascinating to hear these stories, but also, like you say, that there is a completely different perspective on it from people who are watching them in America. We maybe we even possibly guilty of thinking that no one's watching them other than us.
And one of the reasons why we talked earlier about how the project mushroomed. One of the reasons it did mushroom is I particularly wanted American voices in this. American is a national American company, and although we're focusing primarily on the British end, I wanted Dick Clemenson and Bruce Hallenbeck. I wanted Victoria Price. I wanted American people to give me their perspective on it. And we did the same when we did the censorship. The easiest thing in the world would be to do the BBFC, and let's talk about how the BBFC influenced British cinema. But actually, the American censorship was just as interesting a journey as well, and also the dovetails very nicely into the BBFC story. You can't really tell the BBFC the changes in American cinema because it's such a massive impact on it. So yeah, we really, if you want to concentrate on British films and only look at British films, you're missing an awful lot elsewhere in the world, and how what happened elsewhere in the world actually. Give you another, for instance. You can't really talk about Dracula AD 1972 without talking about Count Yorga. Now, Count Yorga as a British release isn't that important. It didn't do a massive amount of money. It came in, well, what? There would be no Dracula AD 1972 if there hadn't been a Count Yorga. It's a huge influence in what happened. And you can actually go back over British cinema all the way right back to the early days. But in the case of Hammer and horror, you can actually pluck out all the examples of where British genre movies twisted or turned because of what was happening over in the States.
Yeah,
if you
even
want to be completely
Golden Vampires and things like that, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you want to be completely UK centric and only UK centric, you're going to have a very narrow view of what's driving these films.
Yeah, that's really interesting because speaking, I want to make sure I mention a few other things because there's so much to talk about because it's such a comprehensive thing, as well as wanting to speak about your book. But one of the things, the article that you wrote is about making Cry of the Banshee. And it's described as like a Poe film without Poe, which I thought was really interesting. Do you think it's unfairly overlooked? Because everybody, or not everyone, but I know I love the Masque of Red Death and I love Witchfinder General, and they're in my constant rotation. But I'll be honest, Cry of the Banshee isn't in my rotation, or it will be now. But do you think it's overlooked in that way? Is it? I've seen it a long while ago, and maybe it washed over me. You know, sometimes you're not really paying 100% attention, because in the same way as Witchfinder General gripped me and shocked me and surprised me in a lot of ways, and Masque of Red Death, I think, is beautiful to look at and just really, I don't know, for some reason, it might have been when I was at university. So we're talking, if I have seen it, maybe 20, 25, 30 years ago. So 20, yeah. So
yeah, 20 years ago.
Yeah. So I don't know. Maybe I am the guilty of, I'm saying it being overlooked. Maybe I'm the one overlooking it. I don't know. Maybe everybody else does put it on.
I think it is. I think you're absolutely right. I think it's neglected film. The debate shouldn't really be, is it neglected or not? The debate should be, is it unjustly?
Right. Yeah.
I like it. I enjoy it, but I'm not blind to its faults. It's a formulaic movie. It was a contractual obligation movie. The guys who made it, Gordon Hessler and Chris Wicking, they didn't want to do it. They didn't want to do that script. They were made to do it. Vincent Price was very unhappy about having to do it. Everyone else came along for the monies, but that doesn't stop it being entertaining.
Yeah.
No. Does it have the same deep themes and driving the film? No. It's what you see is what you get. But sometimes, just dumb entertainment is well worth watching. There's a prurience about it that's quite distasteful, I guess, in 2026. There's violence that goes a bit too far. The treatment of women it can be pretty unpleasant from time to time. You have to try and watch it in the context of the 1970s, not the context of the 20s, which is something you don't have to do with Masque of the Red Death. So
no,
yeah, if you want to enjoy Cry the Banshee, you have to make some excuses for it, but it's still worth watching, and it's still worth making those excuses.
Yeah, that's a really good way of putting it.
Yeah, you can't discount it just because it's not as good as Masque of the Red Death. Otherwise, you'd be discounting 80% of the films that were made in the 1960s, maybe more.
That's it. Yeah, that's a really good point. I think there is a place as well. I think you're right, exactly right. And the part about context, I think, you know, I'll sit down and watch Corruption and absolutely love Corruption. It's one of my favorite box sets. The Indicator box set of Corruption is possibly one of my favorites. It's a bonkers film with lasers and crazy Austin Powers style photography and people falling over each other and just crazy things happening. But in the context of, like you say, it's not high art. But it's so entertaining. It's a film I watch more than I probably should. I love it.
No, repulsion. Sorry, corruption. Corruption. There's not much happening there other than what you see.
Yes.
There's no hidden depth and psychology behind it. It's a mad scientist who's running around cutting off girls' heads and stealing their glands. That's pretty much all there is to it. If you want to read more into it, you can do, but you're doing it retrospectively because the filmmakers didn't read. Exploitation director. His idea of making a movie was get as much blood, get as much sex. All he thought about. So, yeah, Corman didn't think that way, and that's why Corman's movies are far better than Robert Hartford Davis's. But that still doesn't invalidate whether Corruption is entertaining or not. It absolutely is entertaining, and tasteless, and sometimes disturbing, and maybe not the sort of thing you'd admit to your children, your wife. It's still well worth watching.
Yeah. And then the thing is, we're in an age of these incredible boutique box sets with loads of information for a film like Corruption, or even like Don't Open Till Christmas, which is an awful film, but the story behind the film is one of the most interesting and hilarious and sad and bonkers stories behind a film I think ever. There needs to be a documentary or a film made of the making of Don't Open Till Christmas, but the film itself is almost unwatchable, but the box set is gorgeous.
Well, that's the thing, and I have nothing but sympathy with people who are trying to raise families or pay mortgages or whatever else and buy all these flaming box sets because none of them are cheap.
No.
The House of Hammer, I think it provides you with really good value for money. Yes. But it's the first. Yeah, you're going to decide at some point whether you're going to keep up with this set or whether you're going to be spending your money. Oh yeah, nothing's cheap. The box sets are excellent, but buying them all is going to be an expensive business for people.
That's a really good point.
I think Don't Open Till Christmas is probably the one that comes closest to worthless.
Yeah. It's one of those. I love hearing people talk about it. I love hearing about the actors and the making of, and I love like the little clips and things like that. But I think I totally agree. And I guess in terms of making decisions over what to buy, this is one I bought, the box set, this Hammer one. This was a really considered purchase for me. The House of Hammer, really considered purchase, because I do sometimes get to the point where I'm like, I haven't watched that for a long time. I'm selling that. I'm only going to keep things that I look at a lot, and people certainly look at that as oof, because I used to be a completist, and now I think I can't afford to be a completist.
And it is difficult, and especially in something like this, it's setting up a collection, and also you don't want a hole in your collection where you decided, no, I can't pay the 19.99 or whatever it is this month, and then you look at it on eBay 6 months from now, and suddenly it's 115 quid, and you're like, damn it, why didn't I just pay it? But yeah, life is like that, I guess. Life is all about making choices where you're going to spend your money. Well, did you buy the House of Hammer at WH Smith's or somewhere, or did you get it from Hammer?
I bought it directly from Hammer. I saw it advertised. I was looking at the Frankenstein releases, and I have my DVDs of those and VHSs of those, and I know that they've made beautiful 4K things like that. But there was just something about the sheer volume of things on this, and the areas were not things that were retreads or areas that I felt like I knew a lot about already. So I was like, yeah, this feels like my kind of thing. And I particularly like the documentary on there about the Cornish filmmaking, and as well all of it, to be honest. Even the little short film about the youth club, which is a lovely little tale that I can imagine in some of the, because we have little cinemas that people have in village halls in my neck of the woods, and I can imagine that being shown in there. I always go and watch It's a Wonderful Life, and they put like the little trailers and bits and pieces from period trailers on before, and I watch it every Christmas, and I just imagine this would be perfect to have just before the main feature. Even now, it doesn't. I'm not sure what the purpose of it is, but it's fun. It was a fun little time capsule.
Yeah. No, honestly, we could talk all day long whether this represents a good investment or not. But if I hadn't contributed to it, I would be buying it.
Yes,
because it's 8.5 hours worth of 8.5 hours worth of footage. It's like reading your favorite magazine. You can dip into, devote an hour to something and then come back. It just seems I'm the target audience for this. I love the whole concept of it.
Well, yeah, I think I am too. I am too, for sure. I was like, what, a documentary about Michael Gough and talking about Satan's slave. I'm going to ask you at the end, like if there's a film, a recommendation that maybe one that you always, say, oh, you need to check this out because not enough people do. Mine is always Satan's Slave. I feel like it has so much going for it. And I also, I think it is essentially a class version of Get Out. And there's there's so many parallels between it and Get Out. So that's the way I try and sell it to people if they don't want to watch it. But it's one I've always gone back to. And I was unfortunate. It was unfortunate. I was supposed to meet because it's Norman Warren, isn't it? Is it? Am I right? Oh, yeah. And I was supposed to meet, because I was supposed to meet Norman Warren, and he passed away just before. And I was so excited to see him and talk to him about, Inseminoid but mainly Satan's Slave, because it's just such a film that I always come back to. But that's on here. Like, not only do we have AIP, not only do we have, we're talking about Michael Gough and Satan's Slave and Cornish filmmaking. That is such a disparate selection that it definitely appeals to me. I think that kind of jumping from, they're all obviously horror themed, but then there's some things in there that are mainly like about the area of Britain and what pops up from there and kind of folklore, and it's just fascinating.
Well, the British cinema went through a very rich period in the 1960s, and it covered a phenomenal amount of ground. And there were people like who got on the bandwagon. I don't think they particularly wanted to make horror films. Um, they neither of them started out making horror films, but they got onto the bandwagon of horror films because there was perceived to be a market for this stuff. But they brought a different sensibility to it. So Hammer were going down one particular route, and yeah, it's there's nothing wrong with it. It's perfectly acceptable. Norman Warren and Pete Walker. So they took their horror down a different route, actually a markedly different route.
Yes.
And it's different. But you also get people like Gary Sherman, who made a Raw Meat. Deathline is the British title. Who again, he would never have got the money for that if the horror hadn't been booming because of Hammer. So because Hammer are making the production company, can't remember what they were called, said, okay, go ahead, as long as it's a horror movie, we can sell a horror movie. So he made something that was completely and totally different from anything that Hammer or Amicus or AIP were doing. That almost stands alone. And this is what you're getting from the House of Hammer. This idea of Hammer adjacent moves away from gothic horrors and takes you down. Sorry.
No, sorry, it's just cutting out a little bit. So I did.
It takes you away. It takes you away from gothic horrors and horrors like Deathline, like Satan's Slave, like The House of Whipcord, like all of these films. But they all stemmed from the same source, which was Hammer Films.
Fascinating, really, because that period, the Norman Warren and Pete Walker, like I had a real crush on Susan George. So like Die Screaming Marianne and all these films. Like I love that period of sort of trashy. But they were kind of ploughing a lone furrow there when Hammer had kind of dissipated, and I find it a really interesting period. And some of those films, like I say, and like you've just said as well, I think they're so entertaining. House of Whipcord and Frightmare and all of those, I absolutely love them. And you mentioned, well, and again, some of them are really quite shocking now, and it's hard to shock now. But like Deathline is quite a shocking film. Obviously, he went on and made the Vice Squad, which has some real shocking, not horror, but it's a very gripping, shocking film. It's a bonkers film, a great performance. Wings Hauser, just tearing the scenery down. But I just love that period as well, and I hope that will come through. I guess as long as people keep buying these, there will be these. It'll be a real comprehensive history of British horror, won't it?
Mentioned earlier that the Hammer see their remit, or the House of Hammer, this set sees the remit as anything from the early silent days right up into contemporary. As long as it's British or British aligned, then it will get covered at some point. So when by the time we get to House of Hammer Volume 40, Volume 50, you'll have built up a comprehensive volume of everything you can possibly imagine. That's the intention. So it's only a question of time, I guess, before Walker and Norman J. Warren and Gary Sherman and who's the guy who did Mutations? Was it Jack Cardiff?
Mutate.
Was it Jack Cardiff?
I think you're right.
Yeah, Jack Cardiff. All these films. There's so much in there, it might be a while before they get around to them, but the intention is that this all now falls in their purview.
Yeah, I can't wait, because it's a bit like the what's he called, Mark Cousins' History of Film and Odyssey, and that you can watch those or read the book and go through it, and there's definitely things in there. There's foreign film that came up in there, that quite a few foreign films, ones that maybe I'd been told to watch at university, never got round to. And then there's one, I think it's called Moment of Innocence, which really blew me away, that I read in that book. And I found it in the college library. And I was like, there's no way without somebody opening my eyes to these films I would have ever seen them. And that's what I'm hoping, that this will do the same thing for films like Satan's Slave, or Cry of Banshee and things like that. That would be the dream, wouldn't it, to open people's eyes to films that aren't this, everybody knows The Wicker Man, everybody knows that kind of thing.
Yeah, you're right. There's marquee films that stand out over these 2 or 3 decades, or if you go from the start of cinema to the current day, there's marquee films. Everyone knows Dead of Night, the Ealing film from 1945. But you don't know the films round about it. Everyone knows horror. Might not Jimmy Sangster script. So there's plenty in there to come out.
Yeah,
he's far too popular. And Pete Walker will feature for sure. And I think that I'd be very surprised if Amicus and Tygon and the smaller companies, if they weren't cropping up at some point in the next few episodes or years.
Yeah, and I think I was doing a little bit of publicity for the people who do In Search of Darkness, and they're doing the In Search of Darkness 70s. And I made a real pointed, because you could send in any films that you think that they should be considering. And I was like, we don't necessarily need to have a documentary that goes through The Exorcist. I feel like I know everything there is to know, or it's available to me, everything about The Exorcist. As much as I love the film, and there's about 4 different versions of it, and I've read the BFI book, and I've listened to Mark Kermode, and I've read autobiographies and biographies, and I've watched interviews with William Friedkin, and I've listened to William Peter Blatty. I was hoping that in the In Search of the Horror 1970s, that they're going to maybe do a few that might make people go, oh, I've never heard of that. For me, that'd be more interesting, but I think that's probably more likely to be the House of Hammer territory. I think that probably is.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you with big, more mainstream horror productions, they have to service their market. You can't have a horror magazine or a horror focused documentary without talking about The Exorcist. But I agree with you. I think The Exorcist is the best horror film ever made. I love The Exorcist. But
me too, I love it.
If a documentary came on, probably not. I watched the. Have you seen the John Boorman documentary that came out last year?
Possibly. If it's on, I think they've released it on. Was it on Shudder as well? No. Maybe.
Not sure. It's called the Devil and John Boorman, I think it's called. I saw it at Fright Fest Glasgow.
Right.
Actually, I might have seen it in March. Exorcist 2. Really, really good. Well made. Lots of people in there that you recognize, lots of really interesting stories. Thoroughly recommend it. But it didn't tell me anything new, because I read 2 or 3 books about the making of The Exorcist.
Right.
Exorcist.
Oh, yes.
And I
haven't seen that. No, I haven't.
Autobiography. Absolutely check it out. It's a great documentary.
Yeah, it looks great. I've just had a little flick through it.
But it's another example of. Yeah, I definitely check it out. But if you read a book about it, you won't learn anything new about it. They cover the same ground.
Mm-hmm. Well, speaking of books, Witches, Bitches, and Banshees. This looks fantastic. I've got a picture of it, but just below my my head there. Tell us a little bit more about it. What are people to expect when they order it? what drove you to create this, and was it just perfect synchronicity for it to be around the same time as the documentary?
So a lot of background to it. So I'd written a book on Tygon called Beast in the Cellar. Came out in 2005, and this covers Tony Tenser and Tygon. And the Tygon movies, Witchfinder General, Repulsion, Blood and Satan. So Tony Tenser told me that you know what you should do for your next book? You should do AIP. This is in 2000, overlap there between Tygon and AIP. Some of the people I've interviewed already already talk about AIP. Some of the people I've made contact with would talk about AIP to me. So I started digging into this in 2005 and didn't really finish it until about 2021. I just went, I got lost in the research, honestly. I was enjoying it so much. I was having so much fun meeting people. I think I interviewed 40 or 50 people in the end. The directors, the cast, the production guy. I had absolute, and I wanted to talk about not the films themselves, although I do talk about the films. I wanted to talk about the making of the films, which is something I find particularly interesting. The case of Witchfinder General, the making of it's quite well documented, and it's as interesting in the film, maybe even more interesting in the film. And actually, if you dig into, well, you've read the Cry of the Banshee stuff. Cry of the Banshee stuff, not a great film, but my God, I enjoyed reading about the writing about the all the films. So all the films mentioned in the documentary, you get the same, I don't know, 7,000 or 8,000 words on every one of them. I think I interviewed something like 14 or 18 directors of these films. Sadly, most of them are dead now, but people like Gordon Hessler, Robert Fust, who directed the Fives films, Vernon Sewell, we've just talked about. So I interviewed all these guys and got their stories. But it's huge. I mean, I don't know if you've seen it. It's
yes.
It's quarter of it.
Well, yeah, the hardcover,
quarter of a million words.
Yeah, I looked on the it's well, I mean, you're covering from what, 54 to 79, is that right?
So there's the size of the beast. Look, it's just it is massive.
Wow, that's my kind of book,
I'm covering everything from everything from Catgirl, sorry, with Barbara Shelley, all the way through to the land Time Forgot and the people at Time Forgot in the 1970s. So it's picking up Horrors of the Black Museum. It's picking up a Circus of Horror. It's picking up a Harry Allen Towers, the Vincent Price movies, all the way through Dr. Phibes, Madhouse. Yeah, it covers that entire period. And every one of them, I hope, and I think, gets the same in-depth view that you got from to answer your question about synchronicity. The book actually came out in 2023. I'm not sure if Hammer approached Dick Clemenson, the publisher, or whether Dick Clemenson approached them, but I was then buttonholed by Hammer at a film premiere. Steve Rogers again. I buttonholed me at the premiere and said, "You're John Hamilton. You wrote Witches, Bitches, and Banshees. You and I need to talk." So this was maybe 2 years after the book had come out, and that goes back to the conversation. Do you think you could summarize it in 60 minutes? I was like, no way.
Because Beast in the Cellar, I actually have, and as well as obviously as it being so, I have somehow Witches, Bitches, and Banshees hadn't been on my radar until I read your article in here, and then I went into Amazon and typed in your name. So I'd assumed like this was kind of deliberately at the same time, which was incorrect.
Yes. So what happened? What it came out in America. So it's published by Little Shop of Horrors in America. So essentially, it's an American book. And the only outlet you could get in the UK was Hemlock Books. They were the only people selling it, so it didn't go into bookshops. It didn't go to film festivals or film fairs. We sold it as an American book, so Hemlock imported it and sold it as an import. But there's no other retail outlets in the UK sold it. It's not like Beast and Cellar, which you could get in Foyles or Forbidden Planet or somewhere. So this one, again, you and I are very UK centric. If you're living in the UK, this is a strange book. We've never heard of this before. This is all known to us. If you're in America, it's actually, yeah, they've known about this for 3 years. We ended up selling loads in America and didn't sell very many in the UK at all. So the UK is really just waking up to it now. It's getting a lot of attention because it's now on the Hammer site. So it's getting. Yeah, it's the best thing I've written, Matt. I have to be, again, I guess I'm biased, but I've done 9 or 10 books, and this is the one I'm most proud of. I think it's the one where I find my voice, and it's slightly sarcastic and slightly knowledgeable. Oh, perhaps more than slightly knowledgeable. And I think I find my voice as an author in this book. It's the book I would have bought had I found it in a shop.
Oh, fantastic! Well, like I say, I tend to choose. People ask me what I want for Christmas, and I tend to choose one big book. And last year it was I was a big fan of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and they did a really comprehensive making of book with Tarantino, and it was
yeah.
And I thought, and that was, and I think that this year it shall be Witches, Bitches, and Banshees, particularly because I've had so many books through Fab Press before, and I think they're based. Am I right to think they're based out of Manchester? And I think they do Starburst as well. Is it the same people?
No, it's different people. So Fab Press are based down here in Surrey.
Okay, I'm getting mixed up because I just seem to have seen Fab Press written on the back of books, but maybe I've bought them in Manchester and I've conflated the two things. But yeah, or I've sent off for them, or I've seen them in magazines, and over the years I seem to have quite a few without even knowing it that they've put out. And you've worked with them quite a bit.
They do an amazing job. Well, they do an amazing job. They're phenomenal designers. You can the measure of how good they are is they only do one print run. They're old school. They don't do print on demand. These are proper books. The Harvey who runs the company, he orders his 2,000 or his 5,000 copies, whatever it is. He puts them in boxes in his garage, and when they're sold out, they're gone. That's it. So it's none of the Amazon print on demand stuff that you can go on endlessly. And if you want to know the measure of how good they are, go into eBay and have a look at how much they're costing, because they're 4, 5, 10 times the book value.
Wow. Yeah. Do you know where it was where I got mixed up? The Fab Cafe people out of Manchester, they run the Starburst magazine, and that's why I was getting mixed. I was getting mixed up, and it's my. I'm not. People used to think I had like an absolutely like they used to say, who needs IMDb because he knows everything that's on there. Honestly, those days are long gone, long gone. I can't really remember, what I've had for tea.
Mate, wait to get to my age, then you really start to suffer. You can remember things from like I said to you earlier. I can tell you the films I used to write down outside the cinema. I can't tell you what I watched last night.
Yeah, this is it. I could probably tell you the starting 11 of Stockport County's championship winning team from 1996, or off the top of my head, and or like key scenes from when I went to watch Three Men and a Baby at the cinema or whatever. But if you were to ask me like somebody's birthday, that would be, that would be like I'd be like, you know, I just haven't got it.
Hang on, have you just admitted on camera to watching Three Men and a Baby on cinema?
I was probably about I was probably about 8 maybe on like that. Yeah, and there is a brilliant behind the scenes thing there about the potential of a ghost in the background. It's not, but there was a spectre of a dead child. It's not true though.
It's one of these urban myths, isn't it? It's a deleted scene relevance. I've seen that. So you bought Beast in the Cellar.
It's downstairs actually. I'd go and wave it at camera.
Okay. But... Did you get the original? Or, because that came out again last year. In fact, we updated.
I got it. I think I got it. It can't have been last Christmas. It must have been the Christmas. I think I got the paperback from Amazon.
Okay.
Yeah, it was. I think what sold me is that anytime I see Vincent Price on the front of a book, particularly I've read quite a few books on him by I think his daughter. There's one called The Price of Horror. Is that written by Victoria? Or is it?
She did
him?
One.
It's a really good
book. By her.
That's a brilliant
I've got
book.
it here.
So I'm always drawn to anything that has him on the front, as I am by your two.
That one.
Yeah. Yes, that's the one. What a great book! What a great book!
Yeah.
Fascinating gentleman, really.
She turns out to be a nice lady. Actually, we got her in the documentary.
Yes, I saw that, and I was like, because when she was talking about his, and again, I'm not going to spoil it because I almost did this earlier on, where they're talking about Witchfinder General and his mind, where his mind was related to it. I was like, that totally makes sense for a kind-hearted person or a good person to kind of come away from it feeling the way he did. It makes perfect sense.
So the only regret I have about the documentary, and it's a minor one, is Victoria Price. I asked Victoria Price maybe about 30 or 40 questions. We recorded her for a couple of hours. And in fact, everyone, Dick Clemenson and Bruce Hallenbeck and Mark McGee and Peter Fuller and all these guys, Jonathan Rigby, they were all on the camera for a couple of hours. Peter Fuller was on there for 2.5 hours. So there's a lot of footage out there that we didn't get a chance to fit in. We could have run this documentary basically for 8 hours and still not used up all the footage we shot.
I wonder if it'll see the light of day on, like, say, Hammer YouTube or something like that. But then people might go, well, what's the value of buying the box sets? It's tricky, isn't it?
I guess it's all there. It all becomes part of an archive. Hammer are producing so much stuff now that they're building up a massive archive of materials. And I hope it's available somewhere someday, either to scholars or to the BFI or something. But when you're interviewing, we had Elizabeth Shippard, the star of Tomb of Lygia. We interviewed her for the documentary. That's an important historical archive. Jonathan Rigby and David Perry and in terms of that quality to talk for long periods of movies. We can only use snippets and we try to use as much as we could. But again, it's 4.5 hour long documentary. We can't run it for 18 hours. We can't include everything. So yeah, you're right. It's not going to appear anywhere anytime soon. But yeah, who knows? Maybe in 10 years or 20 years, all this stuff will be available to people who are writing books about the period. I guess this period will always interest people.
Yeah, well, everyone's rooting for Hammer. Like even, when the last film, the Eddie Izzard one came out, which I wasn't. It didn't resonate with me. But I know that was the previous regime, and it was, et cetera, et cetera. I feel like everyone's rooting for them and wants them to be successful. And I like a lot of what they did, like the Abominable Snowman site. I've been hovering over by on there, over the last few days.
Yeah.
It looks so great. I just can't. I'm like this. Yeah, I really want to, because it looks brilliant. The clips that they've shown, it looks so crisp, and I love snowy films. I love all, like, I can't remember the name of it, but there's a Rock Hudson film with a snow beast or something. I can't remember what it's called. But I love all those kind of trapped in a lodge and everybody's, you know, being hunted by a yeti. But I can't bring myself to buy it, but I probably will. Because I just know it's going to be a great set, and like I say, everyone is rooting for Hammer. Everybody wants them to be successful.
This is a great time to be a Hammer fan. I think I have no view on whether the previous regimes were good or bad. It's not something I feel strongly about. But I think if you're a Hammer fan in 2026, you're getting amazing editions of some great films. And the extras are phenomenal. The prints are just fantastic. The thought and care that's gone into them, even the packaging is just first class. So yeah, this is a really good time to be a Hammer fan, and they're only going to go from strength to strength. They're only just getting started, really. John Gore's only been there for 18 months or so, so he's only just get his foot in the door, really.
Yeah, that's true. That's true, and I think that as a brand, it's never stopped being cool, really. You see, I remember a few years ago, I saw some Hammer branded T-shirts in Primark, and I was like, "This is wild," you know, like this this is crazy. Like it's a heavy metal band or something, you know. Just the name, I think, even if you didn't watch the films, you'd just go, "Oh, that seems cool."
Well, the term Hammer horror has just become a defined term, isn't it? It's you put it in capital letters, and everyone knows exactly what you're talking about. It turns up everywhere. It turns up in everyday life. It's just become part of the national psyche, really.
Yeah, and I think that's probably a really good place for us to kind of wrap things up. I wanted to make sure I asked you as well. If there's a film, maybe from your research from the book. Obviously, it's a very, very extensive book, and picking one film out of it is probably impossible. But and the documentary is very, very comprehensive too. But is there something that, you know, if people could go and find, it might be in the public domain, or it might be, you know, they find a cheap copy of it on eBay or something, a film that maybe a bit like me with Satan's Slave, that you find yourself always pointing people towards?
Well, I guess there's two films that surprised me while I was writing the book, and I was very pleased to get them into a documentary. The first is Unearthly Stranger, which I had, in all honesty, never heard of, never come across it before. And it only lasts 65 minutes or 70 minutes. It's a very, very low budget British B movie from 1963, starring John Neville. And it's fantastic. It's really good. It's a science fiction story. It's kind of Invasion of the Body Snatchers. It plays out like a really strong episode of the Avengers TV series.
Oh. Warren Mitchell,
and
apparently, is in it.
I think it's just terrific. Warren, who I also interviewed, actually. Warren Mitchell's in it, Neville's in it, Gene Marsh is in it. It's really tightly directed by a guy called John Krish, who didn't make many films, but he's a documentary filmmaker by trade, and it has a really strong documentary feel about it. I guess it must be on YouTube. I'm not sure. I don't think it's ever come out on Blu-ray or anything, but it's really good. So I thoroughly recommend that one. And the other one is much better known, I guess, Night of the Eagle, which is possibly my favorite AIP film. It is at the moment, anyway. If you ask me today, what's your favorite AIP film, it would be Night of the Eagle, which is a black and white. Peter Wyngarde's in it. A story of witchcraft from a Fritz Leiber book. It's a really good book written in the 1940s. And it's just so good. The photography is brilliant. The atmosphere is incredible. It's got an amazing performance from Margaret Johnson. I want post any spoilers and tell you who Margaret Johnson plays in it, but she's really good in it. The special effects are a little bit ropey. You might expect that from a 1960s movie, but they keep the special effects so slight and subtle that actually it doesn't detract from the film at all. If they're both black and white, they're both probably available somewhere on open source. I recommend you go and search out these two films. Actually, Night of the Eagles, a Richard Griffith script. Richard Matheson's the guy who wrote the best of the Edgar Allan Poe movies, as well as the book I Am Legend. So you're not going to be far wrong with Richard Matheson.
Yeah, I think the only thing he did that wasn't brilliant, because I remember the name, because I used to love Steven Spielberg's Amazing Stories, and he wrote a couple of those, I think. But yes, was Jaws 3D? I think he did Jaws 3D, which is I'm a fan of Jaws 2. I'm a Jaws 2 apologist, but I don't think I can be a Jaws 3 apologist.
I don't think he did actually, but I'll tell you where you might be getting mixed up because Gino Swark, who directed Jaws 2, also directed Somewhere in Time, which was from a Richard Matheson book, and he might have done the screenplay too.
Maybe there's like,
I think you've conflated
a story by or something like that. Maybe.
Yeah, I think you've conflated two things there. So I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure he didn't have anything to do with Jaws 3. I'd let him off the hook for that.
Yeah, Night of the Eagle. Yeah, that's right, isn't it? Yes.
Yeah.
I have. I've got. Actually, what I've done is I've just had a look through, and I've got Night of the Eagle and I think another Eagle related film. Yeah. Oh, whoops. Yeah. I was trying to do a research on the fly, and it never works. I'm not that. That's not how I work. I'm afraid. I have to spread all my books out, and for example, the questions I've asked you, they're all. I've spent the last few days, or since you said you do the interview, writing them all out and doing my research and making sure everything is, because my day job is interviewing people. And what happens when I'm doing it on the fly is I click on the wrong film.
Yeah. If you're a millennial, you'd just be one hand on the phone, just tick, click, 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 click. But yeah, no, I feel your pain, mate. I feel your pain.
Yeah. Well, this is it. My diary is like this, and with all writing all over it, and it's the way I work. It must be amazing to a certain degree to be like find the answer to something like that, but that doesn't not how I work. But no, I really do appreciate your time, and I really do appreciate your work as well. It's been great to speak to somebody whose book I've read, but also now I've also watched this documentary, I've read your article in here, and I've now got 2 films to watch that you've recommended, and your book as well, the one that I was talking about earlier on, that's currently in my basket, which is Witches, Bitches and Banshees, the British films of American international pictures. Is there is there any way you want to direct people towards if they want to buy the books specifically? You know, not everybody wants them to go directly to Amazon, or for example, you said Hammer hosting.
Stay away from Amazon. Don't give Amazon any money. If you're in the UK, the Hammer site is cheaper anyway. Hammer are selling it cheaper, so I go to Hammer, give Hammer the money. They deserve it. They'll recycle the money back into this stuff. If you're in the States, go straight to Little Shop of Horrors and Dick Clemenson's site. Again, it's cheaper than Amazon. And the money actually goes to people who care about this stuff and who'll put the money into making more of this stuff.
I mean, can't argue with that, can we? Really? That's definitely that sounds absolutely spot on. If you just stay there, and I'll say thank you to you in person before you get off. But for everyone who's watched and watching now and watching later, just a huge thank you, John, for your time on this balmy evening, which we don't have many of in the UK. So please, once again, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
No, thank you. I've enjoyed it.